Now in WRAL, the changing game, a decision from the NCAA could transform college athletics. The 5 biggest conferences in college sports, including the ACC, now have the ability to make their own rules without the approval of the NCAA. Hello, I'm Gerald Owens.
And I'm Jackie Hyland. The new autonomy is drawing mixed emotions. Mandy Mitchell is here now to explain. Mandy?
Yeah, there are some very strong opinions about autonomy and what it means for the future of college sports. Earlier this week, the ACC, along with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, notified the NCAA of their proposals to provide student athletes with more benefits. It is something that will come at a great cost to the universities, and it's a concept that has its critics. Duke football coach David Cutcliffe has been involved with college football since 1970. He is not happy with the recent vote allowing the biggest conferences in college sports to start making their own rules.
I think it is about money. I mean, I'm just going to tell you like it is.
Cutcliffe calls himself a conservative guy who's been around a long time. He says he is in favor of any kind of reform that makes the college experience more useful to the student athletes, but he's afraid it's headed in a very different direction, a direction that creates a larger gap between bigger and smaller schools.
I don't want autonomy to cause other athletes at maybe different levels less of an opportunity. I don't think that's right.
Nathan Hatch is the president of Wake Forest University. He is also the chairman of the board of directors for the NCAA. Hatch is known as one of the architects of this new model.
I think the real danger for the NCAA, if the small schools wouldn't allow the big schools to do certain things, was that they would break off. And so I think this is a compromise that keeps the Division I together, which I think is very healthy.
So what exactly do the big schools want to do with this new freedom? Hatch says it starts with giving athletes what is known as full cost of attendance, more money in the athlete's pocket to pay for things like pizza on a Friday night, laundry, or even travel home during the holidays. The Big Five, as they are now known, would also like to increase health care benefits and offer full 4-year scholarships to all athletes.
It's important that we support student athletes. I mean, our athletes, when you play at this level, regardless of the sport, it's hugely demanding.
Hatch is very quick to point out this does not mean the NCAA wants to start paying players to go out on the field.
In some ways, this was a clear statement that NCAA schools, particularly the big ones, don't want to pay athletes. That is, they still believe in a model of student athletes, and it's sort of increased benefits that schools want to give them.
Each school is trying to figure out how to pay for these increased benefits. The first NCAA convention since the reorganization is set for January. Cutcliffe is hoping change comes at a very slow pace.
We don't know the effects it's going to have on young people everywhere. We've had a really good game collegiately at a lot of levels for a long time. I really don't see where it's been broken.
The transition to autonomy will happen with that January meeting. Any new changes will not take effect until the 2015-16 academic year. This is the first in a series of reports we're doing on the topic that raises many questions. You'll find some of those questions and answers on the changing game on WRALSportsFan.com.
The 5 major conferences in college sports recently got the ability to make their own rules.
The new autonomy is leading to questions about what can be done by the schools to make things better for the athletes. Mandy Mitchell is here now with the story of one athlete who is speaking up in hopes of change. Mandy.
We hear all the time about football and basketball players. This story a little bit different about a tennis player. What would you do if you got a check for thousands of dollars and had to give almost all of it back? That's what happens often for some of the best college tennis players. It's all in the name of what the NCAA calls amateurism, and it's the kind of rule the Big Five conferences will have the chance to change. Wake Forest freshman Noah Rubin is one of the up-and-comers in U.S. tennis. He is the first American to win the Wimbledon junior singles title since 2007, and in September he competed in the U.S. Open, where he lost in the first round and still won about $48,000.
I had to get back almost all of it just to keep my eligibility to play here at Wake Forest.
Under NCAA rules, tennis players are allowed to play in professional tournaments, but they can keep only enough prize money to pay for their own travel expenses. Any tennis players with hopes of playing college tennis someday are allowed to keep up to $10,000 of prize money a year. They must return the rest, even if they are years away from accepting scholarships.
Not a fantastic feeling since I worked so hard and you want to see a little bit of the the prize money that you earn, and it's rightfully yours. But that's NCAA rules.
Rubin says the rules are complicated and confusing. Former North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Bob Orr, who is outspoken about the rights of student athletes, calls the rules flat out wrong.
The only reason that couldn't take place, both happened. He gets his money from the U.S. Open appearance and plays at Wake Forest, is because the NCAA and its constituent institutions have determined that if you do that, you're no longer an amateur. And if you're no longer an amateur, you can't play.
The big question lies in the definition of amateurism. Take former NC State quarterback Russell Wilson as an example. He was drafted to play professional baseball. He earned money as a professional baseball player and then returned to campus to play football as an amateur. The NCAA says as long as the money is earned in a different sport, the athlete is still eligible. Rubin doesn't see a difference.
Guess I can understand that since we still are amateur, we shouldn't be making whatever amount of money we are. But it's still taking away what I've earned, what I've worked for my whole life, and I understand I'm getting the scholarship out of it, but it's still taking a part of what I work for, so it just doesn't feel quite right.
Now, the NCAA has been willing to talk to us for multiple other stories, but we've tried to reach them several times and were unsuccessful for this story. And a lot of people are going to say, well, he's getting the scholarship. His point, and this is from him, is that he's getting that to play at Wake Forest. The other stuff is on his own time.
Right.
And he says he can do a job doing anything else and earn money, but
right, and not have to give it back.
He can't play in a tennis tournament and earn a prize.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the NCAA has its faults that a lot of people, at least what are perceived as being
It's very
faults.
complicated.
Yeah. Right now on WRAL, the changing game of college sports. This year's NCAA convention will have a big impact on the future of intercollegiate athletics. The NCAA convention is in Washington, D.C. this week, and it will be historic. Hello, I'm Gerald Owens.
And I'm Jackie Hyland. This is the first time the Power 5 conferences, which include the ACC, will meet to pass new rules for college sports. Mandy Mitchell joins us live from Washington to explain why this is so important for Triangle fans. Mandy.
Hey guys, with autonomy passed last summer, that gives the 5 biggest conferences the power to make their own rules. This conference shifted towards the focus for many people in college sports. On Saturday, the ACC, along with 4 of the other richest conferences in college sports, will all get in a room, and what they decide could change the way we view college sports. The change is simple. The biggest schools that generate the most money will now have the chance to make rules that suit them, even if the rules wouldn't work as well at a smaller institution.
We're excited to be there and to see the beginning stages of what this is going to look like.
Under the new autonomy structure, each of the 65 schools will have 1 vote on any piece of legislation brought to the table. For the first time ever, student athletes will get a vote. Each conference picked 3 athletes, bringing the voting total to 80.
Long ago, we had a structure within the NCAA where there was something commonly called 1 school, 1 vote. That died about 12 years ago. We had a new structure. And now we're back more or less to the 1 school, 1 vote possibility.
I actually like it better because I do believe that you're much more engaged when you actually cast a vote. You understand the legislation better. You spend more time vetting the legislation.
Athletic directors say fans should really pay attention to what happens in D.C. this weekend.
I think that this is going to be one of the largest NCAA conventions we've ever had because of the nature of the changes.
If you have an interest in intercollegiate sports, intercollegiate athletics, then you should pay attention to what happens at the NCAA convention because that will chart our future and that will change, it potentially could change the direction of intercollegiate athletics.
Now, the major rule that is expected to pass on Saturday is called full cost of attendance for all student athletes. That's money that would fill the gap between the scholarship and everyday expenses like travel home to see mom and dad. Coming up tonight at 10 and 11, we'll talk to NCAA President Mark Emmert and hear what he thinks about the changing game in college sports. Jackie?
Mandy Mitchell live in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Mandy. And Mandy will be in Washington, D.C. for all 4 days of the convention. You can look for her live reports on our evening newscast.
Well, the NCAA convention is this week in Washington, D.C., and it marks the first time the Power 5 conferences will meet to pass new legislation. Mandy Mitchell is in Washington, where NCAA President Mark Emmert discussed the change and what it means to college sports.
Ken, on Saturday, representatives from the ACC and the 4 other power conferences will come into this room and they will make new rules that suit them, even if those new rules wouldn't necessarily work for some of the smaller schools in the NCAA. It's something NCAA President Mark Emmert says is essential to the survival of college sports as we know it.
Those 5 conferences are working on together collaboratively on a number of issues around student welfare that are, if not unique to them, at least issues that they can address because of their resource base in different ways than other members can.
Emmert, who has been the head of the NCAA since 2010, says the biggest challenge for the Power 5 conferences is to find a way to spend money while not having to eliminate opportunities for student athletes competing in non-revenue sports.
There's no doubt that if you put in place models that allow more expenditures in one part of a program, unless there's new revenue coming from who knows where right now to cover those expenses, then you've got to balance a budget one way or another.
The big piece of legislation that is on the table for Saturday's meeting is called full cost of attendance. I asked President Emmert what he thinks about the proposal, and he says he fully supports giving extra money to student athletes. Coming up tomorrow at 6 o'clock, hear how the Triangle schools plan to vote on the issue and the estimated costs for the universities. Mandy Mitchell, WRAL Sports, Washington, D.C.
The NCAA convention in Washington, D.C. this week will be historic. This is the first time the Power 5 conferences will pass new rules for collegiate sports. Our Mandy Mitchell is in Washington and talked with the man who will chair tomorrow's meetings.
Wake Forest President Nathan Hatch is known as one of the architects of autonomy in college sports. He was with the plan at the beginning and will chair tomorrow's first ever meeting of the Power 5.
It feels very good because over the last year in redoing this governance, there was serious tension. There were a huge number of meetings and compromises, and now I think everyone's pleased with the result. And so there's less tension and concern now as this new form of governance goes into effect.
This new plan, which allows the biggest conferences to make their own rules, began more than 3 years ago. The big schools wanted to give student athletes a stipend. Smaller schools did not. That led Hatch and other university leaders to come up with a plan of compromise that would keep the really rich schools under the NCAA umbrella while allowing for some rule flexibility.
People were very passionate about it and weighed in, and there was fear on both sides. And I think crafting that model, listening to the membership, and then getting it approved, it got overwhelming approval. So I think we found the right compromise.
Now the 65 schools in the Power 5 have to compromise. Tomorrow they will have their first ever meeting and vote on key issues. One of the key issues, should student athletes get full cost of attendance? Coming up at 6 o'clock, I will tell you what that means and how the Triangle schools are dealing with the proposal.
The NCAA convention is in Washington, D.C. this week, and it's shaping up to be an historic event. This is the first time the Power 5 conferences, which include the ACC, will meet to pass new rules for college sports.
It's also the first time Division I student athletes will have votes in the process. Our Mandy Mitchell reports.
The message is just the totality of the experience.
Chris Hawthorne grew up in Raleigh and went to Leesville Road High School and then on to the University of Minnesota, where he was a place kicker for the Gopher football team.
Right.
He has another title this week as he represents the Big Ten with a student athlete vote at the NCAA convention.
I think it's incredible, and it shows how far we've come as practitioners in college athletics, and it means a lot.
It's pretty empty and quiet here at the convention center right now, but it won't be tomorrow as Chris and 79 others walk into this room to vote. Student athletes hold about 18% of that vote.
I think it's going to be intriguing to see how the student athletes vote among the 15, if there will be block votes or if they'll vote individually and vote their own conscience.
The ACC has 3 of the 15 student representatives, Clemson pitcher Patrick Andrews has been contacting athletes across the conference, including those at NC State and North Carolina.
You feel like you're much stronger represented. You're not going through an administrative staff. You're not voicing your opinion to somebody so they can filter it through. You've got actual student athletes in the decision making now.
I think for a long time it's been presidents and ADs really making the decisions, and now for student athletes to be a part of the process from the start to the finish is really unprecedented.
A new voice for college sports that could lead to big change in the near future. Mandy Mitchell, WRAL News, Washington, D.C.
We begin tonight with an historic day for college athletics. Hello, I'm Catherine Brown.
And I'm Ken Smith. The ACC and 4 other power conferences met for the first time today. WRAL's Mandy Mitchell joins us live from Washington, D.C. with a decision on new guidelines that will change college athletics as we know it. Mandy.
A really big day for college sports here in Washington, D.C., guys. The Power 5 conferences use their newfound autonomy to begin to shape the future of the big-time college sports in our country today. And they did so by giving student athletes more benefits. That's something that's making university and conference leaders smile.
I think it's going to be wonderful.
Here's a site for you. 65 universities and 15 student athletes gathered in a room hoping for change.
But we also have the opportunity.
After discussion, some debate, and a vote, the leaders in the richest conferences in the country left feeling satisfied.
I think it was a historic day, and I think everybody felt that because it's been a lot of work, a lot of time to get here.
I would say the advent of Title IX was a watershed moment, and I would say today is as well. We're going to be more productive in this group because the group is smaller.
The conferences voted on several proposals. Concussion protocol and guaranteed 4-year scholarships were hotly contested topics. Both measures passed. The guarantee of scholarships was proposed by the ACC and received 14 of the conference's 15 votes.
Proposal passes.
This is just our attempt to make it very clear to the student athlete that we want them to succeed in the classroom, and failure on the playing field isn't grounds for taking them out of the classroom.
By far the biggest change today comes in the form of full cost of attendance for student athletes. That proposal passed with a 79-1 vote and received the only applause of the day.
There's a lot of financial need by students today, and we have taken a lot of their time away because of their commitments to their sport, and this kind of fills some of that gap.
What we're seeing now is a real commitment to bringing the collegiate model into the 21st century.
Now, that one vote against cost of attendance did come from the ACC, from Boston College. Guys, these new rules do go into effect very quickly. They will go into effect August 1st, so it's coming quick.
Former North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Bob Orr is an advocate for the rights of college athletes.
I would say the athletes really don't have a voice at all in the system when it comes to making the rules, interpreting and applying the rules, enforcing the rules.
Orr firmly believes the current NCAA model is outdated in its own definition of amateurism.
We're here to protect the student athlete from commercial exploitation. That's maybe the most hypocritical statement in any document anywhere in the United States, because it's now become a business. I mean, let's face it, the so-called amateur model, at least at the D1 level, is functionally outdated, unrealistic. I mean, it's entertainment, it's professional sports in a college package.
The college package is worth billions, but many believe the cash cow is economically unbalanced.
What is wrong with the NCAA economic model right now?
Well, from their perspective, nothing, because they're making huge amounts of money, generating extraordinary revenue.
Proposed changes brought on by autonomy and court battles like the O'Bannon case could lead to more revenue sharing among athletes. Full cost of attendance could go into effect in 2015. Beyond that, Division I football and men's basketball players could earn money deposited into a trust fund. But do you pay women athletes? Title IX would suggest you should. University presidents and athletic administrators are still trying to figure out where the extra money will come from.
As expenses rise, the great pressure will be, can schools retain the same number of sports that they have?
If you spend it all, you can say, well, gee, we don't have enough money. If you spend it appropriately, I would submit there's more than enough money to go around for everybody.